Hi, welcome to What's in the Box with Parris Rigby, episode 9. Today we are going to talk about, I'm going to explain to you how this semi-organized crime ring, and I say semi-organized because, I don't know anything about like crime rings, or I guess they would call it mafias or whatever, but it's of my opinion based on the movies, they're a little bit more organized than this situation. Maybe they don't, when you're a criminal, you don't have the OCD gene that I do. And maybe when you're being set up, you're being used, you're being lied about, and you're being destroyed right in your own hometown, you become OCD. You get to the point where you're so angry, you don't retaliate. You just gather and then expose. That's where we are today. So let me explain to you how this semi-organized crime ring works. The main players in this situation, which are Cheryl Rios, Leanne Locken, John Wally Price, Mike Pointer, Stephanie Cooper Pointer, as well as a few others. What they do is they start off by investing in illegal activities. These illegal activities range from real estate to oil rigs to U.S. stock exchange to anything that has to do with any way that they can claim to make money. And they claim to make money. I'm not saying that they're in bed with the IRS because I haven't found that. But they claim to make money these various ways. However, after their illegal activities, what they do is they either invest with their own name or they invest under alias names or a combo, both. It is of my opinion that based on my 12 years of research, and I'm not an investigator, but I am one mad person that didn't leave, in my opinion, a stone unturned. Maybe I did because I'm not an investigator, but I can tell you there's a lot of details here today. If you haven't watched any episode yet, you may want to start with this one. What they would do is they would invest on the U.S. stock exchange. They would invest in an oil rig. They would invest in real estate under various LLCs and names and alias names. Now, we all know that it's a common thing, unfortunately, in the United States of America because America doesn't provide you the ability to work and to create your own goals, your own, outcome. However, unfortunately, we see on American greed all the time. And I know I'm going to make Phyllis Comu, one of my longtime friends, very upset, but I'm going to say it. In Dallas, Texas, CJ Comu, her ex-husband, is in federal prison right now for actually setting up a shell company. That's what these, I wouldn't call them thugs, do. They set up shell companies. These shell companies, they do all kinds of things, these shell companies. But as the internet grew, as I said in episode number 8, or number 7, number 8, in episode 8, what I said was that within these shell companies, as the internet grew, they got together and came up with a grandiose idea of starting Web.com. Web.com, which is also known as Website Pros Inc. And oh boy, let me tell you, I bet you, now if you're from Dallas, Texas, or you are anybody on the web in which you are a publicly traded company, and or your home hub main headquarters are in Dallas, Texas, you may, and you're the CEO, you may have no idea who bought your domain. You may have taken over that company and have no idea. But I can promise you, 95% of you are running through Web.com. They hacked your system. They took your domain, whether you bought it through GoDaddy or whether you bought it through other resources, and they did what's called forward masking. They were making profit. I got to give these semi-organized crime ring thugs one bonus point. They didn't leave, in my opinion, a dollar unturned. They also hid behind what would be school systems, churches, anything that would allow for federal grant money. As you learned in the previous episode about Dallas Khan Academy and Cheryl Rios not only as a main player in this semi-organized crime ring, she not only hid behind, the fact that she was a godly person and everything, she hid behind the fact that she was stealing from the Dallas Khan. she was setting up domains under Mark Grisham, who owns Jail Call Services, and JPay, which is all part of the state of Texas jail services. However, I believe that Mark Grisham was doing his own semi under the table things, and that's why he's under federal indictment or federal investigation at the moment. But I do believe that he had no idea that Shell Rios was actually doing things under a DBA under his company with her name, with Dallas Can. But both Richard Marquez, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, and Shell Rios were not only stealing money and inflating their IRS bills from the Dallas Can Academy, because in 2013, another victim to this situation named Robin Ross Peterson Townsley, who was a victim of the situation, a very good friend of mine, and you will learn later in this podcast, was used by some, I'm a big law enforcement supporter, but there are some people in Dallas that chose to do illegal activities and set up a fake investigation against me, Parris Rigby. And she was used as a pawn by some of our upper echelons of authorities. However, with that being said, she found, because she's a recruiter and she has the abilities to research things on the web, nothing was done illegally. She found the tax return for the Dallas Can from, I believe, 2011, and it gave it all. I mean, almost $1 million to point-to-point security, which I already knew was involved in all this stuff. It's like they're almost inbreds together. You'll learn. So from that standpoint, they invested in alias names. They invested in, depending on, here's what I determined, is that they would invest with alias names such as Carney. They would invest in certain alias names depending upon, this is only my opinion, they did invest in alias names. But it was my opinion, their determination, whether they used their name or an alias name, was dependent upon how many allegations, whether it was indictments or allegations in the public, they had against them for stealing money and doing unauthorized activity. For example, Shell Rios, she claims to be she is a good mother, but she claims to be one of those mother godly people and this and that and yada, 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 yada. I mean, I want to puke. However, she's one of the biggest cons in American history, in my opinion, next to John Wally Price. Sorry, but it's true. She put her name on things. I don't know if that was her need to feel included or need to feel important or not. She used her names and aliases. Kevin Carney, I believe, was John Wally Price's alias. John Wally Price is heavily involved in all of this. But due to the fact that in Dallas, Texas, if you don't know John Wally Price, he has never been, quote unquote, he was indicted in about the early 2013s. However, that indictment fell to the wayside, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, because our beloved FBI agent fell short of a stroke. And I've always questioned, was that because of poisoning, like I had, or was that from a natural cause? I'll never know unless there's blood samples still in the hospital. However, there was a mystery email that came up at the end that I believe came from that server that John Wally Price's assistant runs, with the magical key, and it's from Google, that Damian Liu runs. As you'll learn, his involvement is much greater than you could ever imagine. However, with that being said, these people, John Wally Price, in my opinion, did not, what I found, invest in anything by his name. John Wally Price has lately been accused of stealing $80 million, $80 million, from a school district here in Dallas. Now, most school districts, as I'm a former teacher and still a certified teacher by the state of Texas and have been for 25 years, most districts are independent, kind of like our police stations. They have their jurisdictions. But in Dallas, you get to be under an umbrella. So whether you're Coppell, you're Richardson, you're Plano, you still pay taxes to Dallas, or most of the time. I know Coppell does, but there was $80 million that went missing. The person that told me this, I said to them, and it was an accusatory thing, freedom of speech. I've been accused of a lot, right, Shell Rios and Leon Locken? Accusatory thing, freedom of speech, that John Wally Price had those funds based on his car collection, which I just learned about because I was logged in on Downey Ferry Road in Las Colinas multiple times and learned that that's where they steal cars in Dallas from the car ring and they chop them. But anyway, he's got his own fine car shop, which, I'm not one to check on somebody's salary, but it would make sense for these fine, detailed cars that, oh, by the way, I don't even think like my friend Harvey Carter, who is a very good orthopedic surgeon and doctor, has as many cars and he makes his money ethically. However, that's for somebody to investigate, and I'm not sure why they haven't been to his car situation. But the $80 million that was stolen, I'm wondering if that was run through the server in Dallas and then through web.com. You know that address that I gave you last podcast? Because John Wiley Price is a main investor. You'll learn more about that. So what they did here, they would take illegal names and alias names. And David Brown was our former chief of police. And David Brown, his middle name is not L, but it came out as David L. Brown. And these people use so many, it was alias names and middle names. I don't know if they pulled him out of the air or out of the rear end. I don't know. But I would welcome somebody, and I'm totally for law enforcement. Domingo Rivera will tell you. So will Mark Michaels, and so will Russ Crocker and Larry Bankston. However, I want you to know that I would love for somebody to investigate the accounts on David Brown. No offense, but I find it hard to believe unless they were choosing an alias name, David L. Brown, to invest on the U.S. Stock Exchange under web.com or some of the other investments that I uncovered. You know, sometimes people don't think they're going to be caught because they're head of, something. And in 2013, when he was chief of police, I was told that everybody was told to put their hands down. Just saying, don't know. But at the end of the day, what happened here is they would invest on these different real estate and different accounts. They would either get somebody, like I mentioned earlier, through TXU. They would get somebody, and I'm going to mention some other real estate companies that they used as well, to do their investments, and or they would do it under alias names or their names. They would take their investments. They would take the victims. Sometimes they would use victims' names, such as Parris, Rigby, and that's with 2 R's. I've never had an alias name in my life. I've never needed one. I'm not perfect, but I do things above board. For 12 years, I've screamed at the top of my lungs and filed police reports, gone to the Texas Rangers, gone to the FBI, gone to the FBI Dallas, FBI Colorado, not the FBI Colorado, but this parachute man, you'll learn about him. I've done everything to try and clear my name, and it hasn't worked. So that's why you're getting what I would consider when Donald J. Trump says he wants to clean the swamp. When he ran for election in 2016, I was screaming at that TV the same way I was at the end of that Real Housewives of Dallas reunion when Leanne Locken was accused by her castmates of hacking all of these people's cell phones and accounts. I was screaming at my TV when he said he wanted to drain the swamp in Washington. I said, oh my gosh, Donald J. Trump. Oh, by the way, the swamp, I don't know the swamp in Washington, but I can tell you one thing. The swamp in Dallas, Texas is pretty deep. They seem to breed criminals. They seem to come from Sunset High School. They infiltrate not only the school systems, the real estate, and everything else, and they seem to prey on those that have undealt trauma in their life or that are insecure. They do their dirty work on figuring out who to prey on. Therefore, what they do is they take their victims, whether they're using an alias name or me, for example, or Josh Salganic, or Missy Laurent, who's deceased, or Fred Robinson, or Allison Ainsworth, or Melissa McManus Poe, or David Kiger and his company that didn't last very long, which Cheryl Rios was deeply tied into his sabotage, and I can prove it. Or Tim Vasquez, who's deceased, or my mom, Beth Rigby, or Jay Rigby. What they tend to do is if they use a real victim, myself, Parris Rigby, 2 R's, then what they do is they surveillance you. They surveillance you in every form you can only imagine. Depending on your ability to sit down and put your life on hold like I did for 12 years, they will start surveillancing your devices. And unless you're somebody like Parris Rigby, who is a former kindergarten teacher, former high school teacher, former teacher, and taught myself 4 computer languages, as you learned in the podcast teaser with Domingo Rivera, Officer Rivera, then you would not know that your stuff, your devices, your information, your searches, your what considered confidential logins were actually being surveillanced. But my friend Josh Salganic, who in 2013 was the number 1 and number 3 in the world for SEO, he showed me and told me that in 2015, he was still being surveillanced by these thugs. And I'm going to go through the list of thugs, but I want you to understand how the crime ring works. They will surveillance you and your devices. It doesn't matter if you buy one phone or you buy 20 phones, as I did. It doesn't matter if you have one email address or you have 50 email addresses like I did. It doesn't matter if you set up an email address that's related to your name because you have nothing to hide, or if you get to the point where I did, where you set up your Wi-Fi and your cell phone and your, my emails in an alias name, just trying to keep them out of your stuff. They will figure it out. Sometimes I set a clock and it was anywhere from 4 seconds to 48 hours. And they'll get in your Wi-Fi too. So when you call the companies and you've got fraud in your accounts and or your companies are going through, all these things, then they'll say to you they don't understand, they've never seen anything like this, or they don't see what you're seeing. I get it. So they will actually surveillance you in person. They will have all these minion level, and I call it minion levels, and I'm going to say this because I've never done a drug in my entire life. But I have done enough research as a school teacher, former school teacher, and as people that are around me that evidently didn't make good choices at times, and I would always discontinue those friendships, didn't make good choices, and evidently the drug industry is pretty profound. So what they would do is they would surveillance you, whether it be through cars, a Dodge Charger. If you notice Dodge Charger, there seems to be a little crime ring in Dallas following you, or a white van, or, various, I've got them all, pretty much all of them. Or if you notice cars that are following you and all of a sudden you look up the license plate and it says Raul Sanchez, and you go and you're like, well, my goodness, Raul Sanchez, who is following me, looks like he's 20-something years old. However, you're seeing 4-6 pages of 20 items per page of his name and that license plate belonging to different addresses. And let me guess, in 2013, they were all belonged to the birthday 1929, which that was before the Democrats took over and said, changed the voter mail-in ballots. But I consider that voter fraud. I have it all. However, what they do is they surveillance you. They come in your home. They use bump keys. When Susan Hawk, who went to a hospital, a mental hospital, when she was our DA. Before she was our DA, I sat down with she and George Milner. Georgie is what I call him. You want to call him Mr. Milner. He's a famous criminal defense attorney in Dallas. I sat down with him on a Saturday morning and I explained to them that everything from Susan Hawk's domain, SusanHawk4DA.com, was going up to a Google server over and above. That's because Craig Watkins at the time, even though he didn't win, I'm wondering if he didn't win because I was screaming at the top of my lungs about the fraud that was going on in this mystery server. But regardless, she had her home invaded. You'll have your home invaded. You will walk into your home and you'll say, well, my alarm's still set, but my picture wasn't there, or this wasn't on the floor, and they use psychological warfare to get you. These are premeditated acts that are horrific. Mine ended up going off the charts, which I'll explain more in this podcast. But they use illegal surveillance. And sometimes if you notice that your Wi-Fi bills are increasing, or if you notice your cell phone bills are increasing, or your data minutes are increasing, or maybe you do a search on open source like viewdns.org, or anything, or .info, viewdns.info, or any open source, and you look and you go, I bought my domain, and I'm hosting it through GoDaddy, but all of a sudden it's going through register.com, through MaryMad, through web.com, then you will know that your account has been hacked. And more than likely, you are a victim of not only your account being hacked, and not only are they profiting, because I paid for my own surveillance with electricity, with cell phone bills, with everything. But not only are you a victim with your domain, you're a victim with the fact that they are making money on the U.S. Stock Exchange under alias names. So if I was you, I would take your domain, whether it's dallasda.com, and if you're going through Ultra DNS, call me. I can tell you about that. I'll get to that later. However, if you're going through any server that is not something that you purchased it through, because GoDaddy has never announced, to my opinion, that they've been hacked. They have been hacked, and I can prove it. Because I had 10 accounts. It was ridiculous. And so was GoDaddy, and then there was another one. It'll come to me in a second. But if your domain is not purchased through the one, and it's through web.com or register.com, or if you want to find me on Facebook, message me. I'll look up anything. I love to add victims to the situation because these criminals need to be in federal prison. However, what they'll do is they'll sudden, if they use your name, and the more that you are a CEO of a company, or the more that you have going for you, the harder you work to make your honest dollar. Charles Gibbons of Gibbons Records Department, Hotel Zaza, are you listening? The more that you work hard to make your honest dollar through a paycheck, Dan Condis, are you listening? The more that you're in, especially if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the more, or if you've hit the news, the more that you are in suspect, or you're in a situation, not suspect, you're in a situation that can cause you to find these things. You'll be surveillanced. You will have your company, your domain going through web.com. You will also have various, if you have a YouTube channel, your YouTube channel will be going through various channel IDs. And also, when you go to your YouTube, or if you're an influencer, oh my God, if you're an influencer, let me tell you, you need to learn how to read code or call Parris Rigby. You need to right click, inspect element. You need to see if balloonrace.com and click Control F and do balloonrace.com. And let me know if your influencer account on Instagram, on Facebook, on any of the social media sites has balloonrace.com, because they actually use that domain to mask what they were doing. But I, little eagle eye Parris Rigby, little Dumbo Parris Rigby, big boob party girl, I found that. Yes. So if you're an influencer and you're not getting the money you're supposed to make, or you're from Dallas, you need to check all this. Because it's not about just making your money and thinking you have a website up. It's about actually determining, are you being siphoned? Is your domain being illegally backlinked? Are you losing money? What's going on? So what they will do is they will actually go through and literally surveillance you. Josh Salganic in 2015, as I mentioned earlier, knew his devices were still being surveillanced. My devices have been surveillanced and all of my accounts. Accounts that I set up in Paige Hamilton, accounts that I set up in weird names, just trying to keep them out of it. They've surveillanced every account from Blue Cross Blue Shield, Baylor Scott White, TXU, AT&T, Frost Bank, Chase Bank, PayPal, Gmail, Outlook, my computer, my Google Chromebooks, my phones, American Express, Citibank. I'm going to go into detail about what they did to Citibank later. Nordstrom's. If you have an account in any of these, any company, I would say at this point, because there's not a company in the United States of America that I can say, unless you're a independent company and you're a mom and pop shop and you have an account there, I cannot tell you, I can literally say to you that you're probably being siphoned. Whether you're with Apple and you have all these mystery charges on your Apple account, that's what they do to you. So you may want to pay attention. If you have any questions, I do answer those in my Facebook inbox. That's how the semi-organized crime ring was. They will use your name, use your accounts to money launder, to do things like that. And then if you're not paying attention to your company, no offense, Charles Gibbons of the Hotel Zaza and Gibbons Records Department, but one of your employees, I'm going to name her name, was actually using Charles Gibbons Records Department as an investment firm to actually money launder through Hotel Zaza and yours truly, Parris Rigby, as well as, I'm safe to say, as Kenny Jacova, who owns Sal's Pizza, told me in 2013, because he knows you, Charles Gibbons. And he told me that you would not be involved in any of this at all. And he said, Parris, you're not the only victim. And I believe that's true. Therefore, you need to pay attention, because some of you companies have employees, some of you have little mini crime rings, and I'm going to expose it all. Charles Gibbons, Gibbons Records Department, Hotel Zaza, which there's a boutique hotel here in Dallas, Texas, which is well known, which we won't get into. Benji Momorsky, who runs it in Dallas. We won't get into the Houston development, but it's a nice hotel. And according to my dear friend Kenny Jacova, Charles Gibbons would not have anything to do with this. But part of what they do, besides taking real people's names and running things through their different accounts, or in my case, everything, they find employees, typically at some companies. They find employees multiple employees. I don't know if they compensate these employees with money, drugs, I don't know how they do it. I don't know if it's blackmail. I know that one person I'm going to mention later was done through blackmail, but they find you and they get you. And so Charles Gibbons, you and I, Parris Rigby, have never met. Kenny Jacova says, you're a great guy. It is of my opinion and the research that I've done for 12 years on you that you're an ethical human being. You probably didn't know that your Gibbons Records Department, which is an investment firm, was actually had money laundering going through that account, through the Gibbons Records Department in 2013, through Hotel Zaza here in Dallas, through my Parris Rigby PayPal account, the first one I ever had. And I'm sure there are other people. You have an employee, and I will say that she worked there in 2013. I don't know if she still does. Her name is Lena Griffith. She is close friends with Cheryl Rios. She came down to work a couple of my Halloween, not a Halloween party, I'm sorry, a St. Patrick's Day party at the Hotel Zaza, as well as a Mardi Gras party at the Aloft Hotel. When I discovered, and I can prove that I was not at Hotel Zaza the night that the money ran through my account and PayPal, Lena Griffith is somebody that needs to be looked into. She needs to be looked into all the way beyond 2013. Charles Gibbons, it is of my opinion, and the research is a non-investigator, but somebody that has an eagle eye and was mad about what happened to me, that these thugs, this crime ring, semi-organized crime ring, they used your Charles Gibbons, or Gibbons Records Department as their money laundering operation until they started forming their own. So as these thugs started making money through their illegal operations, whether that's stealing the money from people, whether that's illegal investments, whether that's, fraud from the federal government money, however they did it, because there are multitudes of different ways. John Wiley Price, should we look at all your companies? Lena Griffin, they started running it through your company. Then they formed their own investment firms. I, Parris Rigby, have never had the pleasure of making enough money to even invest in anything because my life was stolen and an illegal investigation was put together as a hit job against me. We'll get to that in a little bit. However, with the pattern that I, Parris Rigby, found, and I'm sure that a real investigator, a good ethical, because there are lots of good ethical, more of our law enforcement investigators are ethical than non. Actually, what I found was they were doing these investment firms as shell companies. As I mentioned earlier, the shell companies. These shell companies were tied to typically the state jail calling services, such as JPay, jail call for services, the Kansas Department of Corrections. And there is one other state that I was able to uncover that they would get involved with. And I'm sure that a real investigator could look at this pattern because somebody very wise named Officer Domingo Rivera told me in 2016 that it is criminals do patterns. So the pattern in these shell companies that they set up for investments to take what I learned this past weekend from that movie Ozark is take dirty money, which is stolen money, drug money, money that you took siphoned from somebody else, and they clean it. I would think that is like using Dove soap and like taking an extra long shower. They clean it through various forms, and then one of the ways that I feel like they were cleaning the money were these shell investment firms. They're tied to the state jail call services or the jail pay services. Evidently, if somebody doesn't make a good choice and they go to the jail, then they have a commissary. So in different states, as I have never been to the jail, I have never been arrested, but I did do a walkthrough, and I don't even know what that was, for some insurance crap from my ex-husband in 2000, like early 2000s. But let me tell you that it's evidently a commissary situation where you can buy like treats, sussies. That's what my mama calls it. However, if you're an investigator, you need to take in my opinion, you need to take every state jail call or commissary company, and let me tell you, they can come down and they may have like jail call services, and it may be like a little pyramid, and you may run out of Charmin toilet paper before you run out of these DBAs and things. They will do that, and they eventually get to an investment firm, and that is where I feel like they were cleaning their dirty money. So we go from there, and they would also, let's talk about some of the suspects that they use. Let me go here. So they do that, and they clean their dirty money through shell firms. If you are watching this podcast, or you know anybody within the Dallas-Fort Worth area, or anybody that is well known, and you know, like, I'm going to use Richard, not Marquette, Richard Branson. You are somebody that is very well known around the globe, okay? You did an investment for a hotel here in Dallas with my dear and longtime friend, Bill Hutchinson. Richard Branson, I'm going to use you as an example. I haven't done any deep dives on your domains or anything, but I can almost guarantee you, if you are missing money, or people are having trouble with your domains or anything, you need to look into it. Because if you're anybody that does investments with Dallas, but yet whether you're shaking hands and kissing backs and kissing babies and slapping backs in Dallas, or if you're around the globe and you're well known, you need to look at all this. Because what they do is they take everything and they go through, if you're high net worth, or you have a high net worth such as Richard Branson, then you need to absolutely don't discount the fact that you've missed out on, or maybe your P&Ls are off, or maybe somebody says, I'm making a reservation to this hotel and there's a problem. Don't just rely, and no offense against IT people, I respect you, but let me tell you, I had a front row seat to every form, in my opinion, of sabotage, which electronic sabotage, or electronic manipulation, as I call it, down to the fact that also affects your P&Ls. So I had a front row seat. Therefore, you need to check, and don't take for granted that maybe your domain's off, or people can't make hotels, or that all of a sudden your ski season in Colorado is really good, and it's been that way for even pre-COVID and post-COVID, and all of a sudden it's nowhere. That means that you are on the globe, in my opinion, of these thugs. Because it's not Drain the Swamp in Washington. It's called Drain the Swamp in Dallas, Texas. Which I can tell you extends to Atlanta, Georgia, to Florida, to New York, and even New Jersey. We have an ex-DEA agent named Jim Collins, Collins. And if you look at his Facebook page, he's there with his family like he is just, the next preacher on the web that is involved in this crime ring. Don't take a book or a cover or a picture and determine that that's a good person. Do your research. Jim Collins in 2016, was actually running his illegal operations as an ex-DEA agent. That's Drug Enforcement Agency. He was an ex. I don't know why he was an ex, but I can only guess. Through AT&T. Wait till we get to AT&T and their mini crime ring. And wait till we get to that I, Parris, Rigby, verified that everybody in that crime ring is actually an employee. He was running his operations through a victim's, Michelle's, computer. And I can only imagine what else he needs to be looked into. So don't think to yourself, because I am a huge supporter of law enforcement, just because they're law enforcement or they're ex-law enforcement, and nothing against law enforcement. There are bad apples in every industry, including teaching. It doesn't matter. But Jim Collins, he is not good, from New Jersey. That's one of the states it's running out of. Therefore, I'm going to tell you that they run everything, even all the way down to the Department of Justice, Department of Justice for Texas. Department of Justice. I can tell you that they run things through, not only, as I mentioned earlier, through employees. Sometimes they have an employee. Sometimes I feel like they have an open port. Sometimes I feel like that they have paid somebody, such as Wells Fargo, and they pay somebody to insert an alias, a fake employee at a company. And when we get to Wells Fargo on my cell phone, I'm going to tell you exactly what it was. That I felt like, because I've had a Wells Fargo account when I was married in 1997. I haven't had one since then. But in 2014, I had a Wells Fargo email employee in my phone. I don't feel like that was a real employee. I felt like that was an alias employee. So they either will get your company by an open port electronically. They'll get your company from an actual employee, and it's probably the most buttoned up, nun person that you could meet, or it's actually through a fake employee in which they're getting all the employee benefits from. I don't know. I just know what I've uncovered. That's how they run their operation. The Department of Justice was actually, is the Department of Justice, no offense, but your database or your website or your electronic situation has been hacked by these people. Desiree Reyes, L-Y-R-E-N-A Rios, and she also goes by Desiree Browning, and she has a whole slew of other aliases in which she goes through, is part of the problem with the Department of Justice. In 2016, for security purposes, Michelle had a driver's license renewal. I mentioned it earlier in this podcast, in the previous episode. We confirmed that that hadn't changed. It had not changed at all with, because sometimes the state of Texas changes their driver's license, and we determined that, and there was a lump in it. It was a weird situation. Anyway, I also told you about my background check from 2017, when I literally went to go do my background check, my fingerprints, as I was going to substitute teach at Coppell Independent School District. However, when I went to get my fingerprints, they asked me if I was a kidnapper, if I had been anywhere involved in a kidnapping in Mexico. Number one, I've been to Mexico once in my life. That was when I was in 9th grade with Vicki Detweiler and her father. I've never been there. I was stunned. I had to go to a different agency and finish my background report. But bottom line is, I got my Department of Justice fingerprints back, and they were two totally different formats. Michelle and I, in 2016, went to the website that was on the paper that was attached to her driver's license that came in. And we were able to determine the Department of Texas, the Texas Department of Public Safety, your website was not the same. What you put up on the web, there was a clone to it. Michelle has all the documents to that. We're able to figure that out, and we figured that out through other things. And as you will learn, how they also would manipulate people, that they would run through their stuff. I will tell you about Microsoft and other servers that were running through her phone. As I mentioned earlier, they would take things, if you're a victim and they use your stuff and you have no idea what's going on, they would use your stuff to run illegal operations through. From that situation, the Department of Justice, also, Parris Rigby, could not get my that sticker. In the state of Texas, we get a sticker that's like a registration for your car. You have to go take it to the gas station and make sure that everything's running on it, and then you go and you either mail it in, or you can go on the website, or you can go in. And I mentioned in the previous podcast that I could not get my car registered. I would go to the gas station, the guy would go, everything's great. I would literally, my dad, Jay Rigby, and I would sit there at the computer, and it's on one of my cell phones. I took a screenshot. It would say no VIN number anywhere in the Department of Justice website, or it would say that there were two VIN numbers. And I mentioned in the previous podcast where I literally went in one day because I was like, uncle. And the lady literally, she got back behind her chair. She came all the way around those little, windows. She came around. We went out to my car. She took a picture of my VIN number, went back to her computer, and was like, this is nowhere to be found. She's like, and like PayPal told me, like American Express told me, she'd never seen anything like this. So I was not able to get my previous car registered for many, many years. And in fact, in 2018, I was pulled over by a nice officer in Richardson, Texas. He walked over to my car because he ran my license plate, and he said, and I had my next door neighbor, Lindsay Majors, in the car with me, and he says, he was laughing. He was like, your car hasn't been registered since 2014. I'm like, I know. And I explained to him what's happening. He was very nice. He let me go. Thank you, officer. However, Desiree Reyes, Desiree Browning, and all of her aliases need to be looked into. I had a company with Shell Reyes through the state of Texas, Secretary of State. It was called Adding To. Biggest mistake of my life, let me tell you. All of a sudden, we formed that company in 2013. That company did not even last 6 months. I brought all the clients to the table. Cheryl did nothing. There's a federal civil lawsuit, which I'll read you all the accounts against her, which she's guilty of, on that website, on that federal lawsuit. However, when in 2000, I believe it was 18 or 19, it's on one of my email addresses that I took a screenshot, and all of a sudden the claims agent on that Adding To, which was not even supposed to be inactive, because when I filed the federal civil lawsuit against her, I was told to fill out this paperwork, which I did, and I sent it into the Secretary of State. And that, of course, either was mail fraud or, Desiree Reyes or whoever else is in the DOJ, they just didn't get filed. Regardless, the claims agent on that particular company changed to Cheryl Rios' niece, Desiree Rios. Desiree Lanera Rios, Desiree Browning. And if you're an investigator and you really want to deep dive into this, I have a list of all the alias names that are attached to this. So I have proof that everything I said about the Department of Justice, your website, your domain, your security is infiltrated. Other than Desiree Reyes, Desiree Browning, I have no proof that any employee is involved. It may be an open port, I don't know. As I was talking about what they would do if you are a victim of this crime ring, not only would they surveillance you illegally electronically, not only would they surveillance you in person, not only would they use bump keys and come in your home with these thugs, they would also, in my case, they used mail fraud. For years, I wasn't getting my packages. I was literally would order things, sitting back going, okay, what's going on? And I would watch these packages take these trips. There's a U.S. Postal Service employee, and I will tell you his name. There was a U.S. Postal Service employee, and I believe this is the person where all of my mail from 2013 to 2013 all the way to 2016 would say Key, K-E-Y, Parris, Rigby. Well, let me tell you, my name has two R's, P-A-R-R-I-S. I have had boyfriends that I've dated for multiple years that still did not spell my name correctly. However, this Key Parris Rigby was huge. It was constantly on everything. Oh, it was right here on the that's Hotel Zaza. Give me 1 second. I have his name right here. Let me find it. There was an employee. Oh, it's right here. My stalking, which happened because I was a victim. As I'm explaining to you, if you're a victim of this crime ring and you don't know it, what to look for, I was not only stalked by gang stalkers, I was not only stalked online and in person, I was stalked by the United States Postal Service. The suspect that I came up with, based on his ties to Damian Liu, who works for Google and poses as a quote-unquote CVS pharmacist, is Justin Hamilton. I'm wondering if an investigator would please find Justin Hamilton and do a handwriting sample. I can give you the mail that I received, and my mail sometimes, because I used to, in a previous podcast, I mentioned I used to write like birthday cards, thank you notes, all these things to people because I'm old-fashioned like that. However, starting in 2011, my cards wouldn't make it. Starting in 2013, 14, I think, my mail would say Key, K-E-Y, Parris Rigby. So I was not only stalked by gang stalking, by Cheryl Rios, by Leanne Locken, by the United States Postal Service, I was also stalked by Amelie Design District and one of their employees. Lucky me. But this Justin Hamilton needs to be looked into for mail fraud and technology manipulation. It is of my opinion, he's the only person, the only name that I can come up with under my 12 years of doing nothing but crying, begging for help, talking to wonderful Officer Domingo, who's got me this far, and putting all this together. It is his name, and he worked for the United States Postal Service. Therefore, that's one thing that they would do. So if your mail is being tampered, you need to pay attention to that. They also, they would also do different things as far as if you have accounts with anything from a background check company to Apple to anything that you're paying for. And all of a sudden, you've noticed an increase in bills, or I know a lot of us these days, we rely on technology. We don't look at our bank records as much. You may go to Barnes & Noble. This happened to my mother in 2013 and 14. You may go to Barnes & Noble in Dallas, Texas, the one that's across the street from North Park Mall, and you may buy $76.19 worth of books or whatever they have, cards, whatever. Then all of a sudden you see that on your credit card and or your bank statement. Well, then all of a sudden the next bank statement or credit card, maybe 2 months later, you'll see another Barnes & Noble, $76.19. But it may say 15th Street in Plano, Barnes & Noble. You call Barnes & Noble and they say, no, we only have on record the one charge that you actually made, which matches your receipt. But your bank says, no, this is a real charge. We can't give you any money back. And that is one of the other ways that these thugs would manipulate technology they didn't leave a penny on the table. You may want to pay attention. You also want to pay attention to Apple. I can show you where Michelle, and I don't want to say her last name due to security purposes because she went into hiding in 2016 after one of the real estate companies that is heavily tied to all of this, and I'm not so sure that he's not involved with Damian Liu, to the LinkedIn hack that happened in, I believe, 2014, named Diego Lombardo Holmes. This man was in Michelle's home at Highline, 1400 Highline, aka Amelie Design District. I term this Guantanamo Bay, the prison. You'll know why later. There was a cigar that Diego Lombardi, he smoked. Parris Rigby, you know I pay attention to my skin. I don't smoke cigars. I smoke cigars occasionally. I am not a connoisseur, but I do know my cigars. I do pay attention to things. And he would leave a cigar. I had this cigar for many years, and to the point where it traumatized me. If you've had any home invasion and it's a brown, like rustic color, and usually a cigar, a good cigar, the roll on the outside is a different color than the internal stuff. It's the same color inside and out, and it has the strongest odor. This man came into my home at Amelie Design District. It was 1400 Highline Drive, Dallas, Texas, 75207. And my unit number was 1914. He also left his cigar in Michelle Manitou's apartment at Getmo, Highline, Amelie Design District, on the 8th floor. Michelle, after we spent 6 months uncovering so much of this crime ring, went into hiding. She moved to a high-rise across the way. Diego Lombardo came to her home and left his cigar there as well. If an investigator wants to contact me and I'm still friends with Michelle's mom, then you will know I'm telling the truth. Diego Lombardo, when she finally went into hiding for again, came to that home as well. This man, in my opinion, Parris Rigby, and based on the multitudes of research that I did on Damian Liu, who evidently runs the server in Dallas, Texas, it's illegal, but also works for Google, who was in charge of the St. Patrick's Day Parade here in Dallas, which is how I think I got targeted, but whatever. He is, when Target, the company Target, was hacked, and it was done through the air conditioning units. They were running the POS, which is the point of sale systems, through the air conditioning units. Then when I did my deep dive research, which I cannot find on the web the last time I looked, but I have printouts and screenshots, and I'm not ashamed to say it, Diego Lombardo's name appeared on everything that I found. I took my mother in 2014 when I came to my parents' house, because I had to move out of my home, 2820 McKinnon, in 45 minutes. I was doing all this research because my parents' Wi-Fi was running through the DART rail system 4119, as well as a local Starbucks that Damian Liu operated. However, When I took my mom into a bathroom, because you would think we were nuts, we had to go into like these secluded areas to even talk. Because if I said I loved vanilla ice cream, then vanilla ice cream was going to be tampered or extinct. You have no idea the levels, as you will learn, that they went to psychologically warfare, traumatized, poison, you name it, me. My mother and I stood in that bathroom and I showed my mother exactly how I came up with Diego Lombardo Holmes. My mother, bless her heart, she's a sweetheart, was like traumatized herself at the time, but I have the printouts. Target, if the hack, I've never seen anybody arrested for that. You may want to look at Damian Liu and Diego Lombardo Holmes. In 2015, right after or maybe it was 2014, it was either 2014 or 15, I was living at 1400 High Line Drive. This unit was number 916, Dallas, Texas, 75207. I was living there, and right after, some of these, excuse my language, assholes, thugs, that were out of California ordered a pizza on one of my Yahoo accounts. And this Yahoo account was set up an alias name to try and keep my security systems and the notifications and pictures away so they couldn't sabotage them. It didn't do me any good. They ordered a pizza. This was right after that was when I got a notification that my LinkedIn account, which I had not been able to log into since 2011, there are 3, there may be more LinkedIn accounts under Parris Rigby. I only had 1. I have not been able to log into 2011. But Diego Lombardo, which I know what you look like. In my hypnotherapy, I described your greasy self. And that brown pickup truck that you drive, which, you know what, I got to give you credit. It's a beautiful color, and I've seen lots of brown pickup trucks around here, but I know exactly what yours looks like. And I also have the license plate of the car that you drove when I went to Denise Walreed's home in 2016, because you harassed me for years. But somebody needs to look into you, the profits that Diego Lombardo has made on his real estate company, whether those are stolen profits, and if that store, as Amir told me about, that is a store where you can go and buy off, I guess if you're buying plywood and the average person goes to Home Depot or wherever, you go to this store, and even Amir said he thought it was all stolen property. But you were the one that hacked my LinkedIn account. I have never mentioned that because it has taken me 32 hours of therapy to be able to say that, and I am not afraid. You need to be investigated for the LinkedIn hack as well as the Yahoo hack. I'm sure that federal officials, because I'm not anywhere in law enforcement, I'm not an investigator, but I am one mad eagle eye. You need to be looked into with Damian Liu. Because of my USBs, there's screenshots. And when I find the screenshot about all the millions of dollars in my Facebook page that were going into overseas bank accounts, I cannot wait after 32 hours of therapy to see if you are tied to that as well. You are real estate #1. You are tied to this crime ring. I would love for an investigator to do the trace of John Wiley Price's cell phones. They're probably either running through AT&T, T-Mobile, probably not Verizon or Sprint, because they've kind of maxed out, in my opinion, between point-to-point security, which we'll get to. They've maxed out what they can do with Verizon and Sprint. But I would look there. You know? I think that when the guy from Subway, the guy that was the Subway guy, and he was brought in for he was a child sex trafficker or whatever, and I think if I remember correctly from reading the news, they went in with a sniffing dog, not a drug sniffing dog, but a USB chip smelling dog. You may want to take that around John Wiley Price's house and Diego Lombardo's. And I'm very aware that you go back and forth between here and Mexico. Are you the one that put the yellow spider in my home in 2016, which I still have a mark on my arm, and it was a poisonous spider, and I have the person that was sitting across from me when it bit me, and I looked it up and it comes from Mexico. I felt like all these years, and I had Highline come, our Amalie Design District, come out and actually, you know, I guess what's that called when you come out and you spray for bugs and stuff. But it's all there, it's all in my notes, it's everything, and I have a witness to it. since you came back and forth, and evidently these cigars come from Mexico, Diego Lombardo, consider yourself in the same line as Leanne Locken. You're not a criminal for the act of committing the crime. You're a criminal because in my eyes, and I cannot wait for an investigator to look into you, you're caught. As I mentioned earlier, real estate is one of the things that I was told and made aware of that these thugs invest their money in. Somebody, and I call him the Parachute Man, and I don't have his name in front of me right now, but he came down to meet with Michelle and I in 2016. We met at the Ritz, and I call him the Parachute Man. He was supposedly, and I say supposedly because I never called the Colorado FBI to ask if he was a representative for them. I don't even know if the FBI has representatives, but he came down and I showed him the SSL certificates of the Chinese government, which I can tie to point-to-point security, which I'll do in the next podcast. But I explained to him what was going on with all of this. With that man being here, he said to me and Michelle, I can tell you which booth we were sitting in at the Ritz. Dean Faring, you would be so proud. We conducted a serious situation at your venue. Dean, love you. Therefore, he told me that he knew that the FBI Colorado, now I don't hold anything against the FBI Colorado because this is the Parachute Man that told me this. I called him the Parachute Man. I have nicknames for people. That, oh, by the way, this had to do with real estate. In 2014, I was told I had 45 minutes to move out of my home. When I moved out of my home, at that time, I moved to my parents' home for about 4 months. When I lived in my parents' home, we had to put everything in storage, in uptown storage. When we put everything in storage, most of my stuff, because I had lived by myself and, coming back to my parents' house, which is jam-packed full of stuff, my father and I went to my storage facility, and I had 2 storage facilities, a jumbo one and a smaller one. When we came to that, and my father and I had a conversation with my father just the other day, he remembers this, there was all of a sudden a lock, the lock on my storage facility in Uptown Storage, and I can tell the exact date, it's here somewhere. We went, and oh, by the way, the lock on my storage facility had been changed. Really? I paid my bill, and I proved I paid my bill. However, my dad and I had to go downstairs to the man at the front desk, and he had to come upstairs and use a little chop thing to cut the lock. We cut the mystery lock on my storage facility. Guess what? As we moved stuff out of my storage facility, you walked right in, and I'm a very organized person, a little OCD, pre-trauma. However, to the right-hand side, there were 2 boxes. These boxes were not my boxes. They had the name Amy, A-M-Y, Vertez, V as in Victor, E elephant, R rainbow, T Tom, E elephant, S Sam, Winslow, W wheelbarrow, I igloo, N Nancy, S Sam, L lamb, O octopus, W wheelbarrow. I took a picture, I believe, I'd have to look at my cell phone at that time, of those boxes. My father, as I mentioned earlier, remembered seeing those boxes. I was like, number 1, who is Amy Vertez Winslow? Why are her boxes in my storage facility? And why was there a mystery lock? Typically, a storage facility will put a mystery lock on there if you haven't paid your bill. And I would beg Uptown Storage to say that their records stated that I didn't pay my bill. Because let me tell you, the one thing I am is OCD with an eagle eye when it comes to my life and this, excuse my language, shit show. Therefore, in 2014, I was starting to get nervous. Because, oh, by the way, I had been to multiple law enforcement agencies. It was getting creepy. The death threats were increasing. It was just getting too much. So I believe I took a picture of those boxes, and my father remembered them. But in the last 6 months, I finally had enough courage, probably through my therapy, to look up Amy Vertez Winslow. Guess what? Amy goes through, let me just rephrase this. Over these 12 years, if you don't know me, you don't know that I'm the most detailed person. I dot every I and cross every T. And I may say something, as Officer Domingo will tell you, that may sound like that I've just fallen off the loony bin. However, but I don't say anything unless I have the evidence to back it up. There is a phone number, 860-977-4441. I collected two 3-inch binders full of phone numbers over the years. Part of the way I was able to put this semi-organized crime ring together was through their phone numbers. That phone number was part of Amy Veritas Winslow's. Amy is evidently a real estate, whoa, magical word, agent at Keller Williams in Plano, Texas. Amy, investigators, I'm wondering, is Amy a victim or a suspect? If you know me, you know that I always go for the best case scenario, and I'm always like cheering for the underdog. But my gut tells me that Amy Veritas Winslow is a suspect. Amy Veritas Winslow needs to be looked into for her real estate transactions. If any of her real estate transactions are involved with any of the suspects, the 84 suspects that I have, including their alias names and or their companies. Because I feel that as a non-investigator, Eagle Eye, Parris Rigby, she is tied to doing real estate transactions with some or more of these alias names, suspect companies, because, as I stated earlier, they would find people at companies and either give them compensation or they'd use a report. They would do different things. I believe that Amy's boxes were in my storage facility, and I only had that storage facility from like April of 2014 to August of 2014, and this was the middle of the summer, so I hadn't had it very long. She needs to be looked into. Amy Veritas Winslow. If you're an investigator and you want to know more information about Amy, maybe some things that I have, because what I have found is over the years, in 2011, 12, 13, 14, I was screenshotting things and printing stuff off like trees were, well, I don't know how many trees I cut down. But the information, and I don't know what real investigators like FBI and CIA can find, but I know that I, Parris Rigby, have never seen so many forms of technology manipulation. I have never had more publicly traded companies say to me, we don't see what you see. So I know that I believe that even though you're FBI, whatever, maybe you can see something, but these people, these criminals, let me tell you, they do their well-doing on emulating accounts and whatever. I am happy to hand you every bit of information, but you need to look into those two people, as I put on my Facebook page, Diego Lombardo, and Amy Veritas Winslow. They are deeply tied to, well, I know Diego is, but they are deeply tied, and I feel like Amy is, to this semi-organized crime ring. I bet you these thugs are ready to jump off a bridge. And that's fine, because you had no idea. Diego Lombardo knew that I had his cigar, and I should have kept it for DNA, but I've got so many cigarettes for DNA. But Amy Veritas, you're probably ready to jump. Until next time, we're going to continue, and I bet you right now, people are ready to jump off bridges or your jaws are dropped. Check your accounts. If you are somebody of net worth, you're somebody that's a influencer, you're anybody that has any contact with any person that I have mentioned, because I am not holding back on anybody's names, or you invest in real estate, you might want to, something that's little could possibly be something big. These, excuse my language, assholes did not leave a penny on the table. Until next time, we'll see you then. Get your popcorn ready.